Welcome once again to the Cow Report, and I'm your host Chuck Lee, and as usual, with me is my rusty, trusty sidekick and fellow traveler, Fred, the true Stafford. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Howdy.
Glad to see you're back in tip-top condition and ready to get back in the battle.
You bet. I'm ready. I got my helmet on.
Now, is that the memorial helmet you got in your little clandestine operation down there in Haiti when you got wounded?
No.
Well, what's the deal?
I got that from the Catholic War Veterans box.
It's hiding those wounds, though, the Haiti ones. Okay, Fred, tell us about this flag here.
Well, the Allied Veterans Council, which is composed of all the veterans organizations in Eau Claire County, at my suggestion, bought a flag to give to PAC, and here it is.
Okay, Fred.
You can see that on there.
It says, presented to Public Access Channel 11 by Eau Claire County Allied Veterans Council.
Right.
Okay, Fred, in honor of this new flag, I think you ought to lead all of us in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. We can at least take our hats off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn.
Amen. Okay, Fred, you just dedicated the new flag into service. And I don't know who. There, we got sound now. We had a battery out. Are we getting sound? Okay, Fred.
Yes.
I guess we might have missed the first couple seconds of it. All right. I guess we didn't. But anyway, this is the new official L.E. Phillips Memorial Library
Flag.
/ public access flag.
Well, it's a public access
Okay.
flag.
Public access
We gave it to public access. We didn't give it to the library.
Public access or public access?
Access.
All right. Okay, this is the official public access flag
Mm-hmm.
from now on. And it can't disappear because it's even got a brand on it that says it's a public access flag. All right, Fred, we got a lot to talk about as usual.
Yes.
Boy, oh boy, we got a lot to talk about. And this is coming to you live on a beautiful August afternoon right here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It sure is beautiful out there, Fred, wasn't it? There wasn't a cloud in the sky.
Right on.
Yep. Now, if any of you are watching by lawnmower today, please tune up the sound a little bit. You know that the new Flavin's invention where you've got that thing that you can strap on and you put the TV right in front of you while you're cutting the grass. You can watch the show. So for those that are outside, please turn on your TVs as you're cutting the grass. Now, Fred, have I ever told you, well, we want to always recognize the staff around here, Fred. And, of course, we've been on the show now, what, 20, 25 years? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
No, I think it's a little less than that.
Well, you know, Chris and Cliff Economaki, the Siamese twins of engineering, have been with us.
We're not going to go through that again, are we?
They've been with us all these years, Fred.
Yeah?
And they've never wavered.
Well,
And their
that's
support for the
good
show.
that they never wavered.
Have I ever told you the story about how they got
Too
it?
many times. Too many times.
Well, you know, Fred, we got thousands of new listeners and viewers, and they would like to know about this.
Well, then you ought to tell them privately.
I've had them ask
Call
me
them up and...
I've had them ask me on the streets, what's this about this Chris and Cliff Economaki, the Siamese
Well,
twins
so
of engineering?
I wouldn't let them know. Keep them in the dark.
Well, Fred, I think for the new viewers, we should go through it real quickly what happened.
I don't think you should.
Well, Fred, you know when they were born here at the...
I forget about it.
They were born here in Eau Claire in the
That's
hospital.
too bad that they were born. I know.
They were born here in the hospital.
What's the matter? They're born in the hospital? Were they sick?
Well, they weren't Siamese twins to begin with, Fred.
Yeah.
In a freak accident,
Yeah.
the mother was thanking the doctor for the good job of delivery, and she was so thankful, Fred, that she offered the doctor a trip. And she said, I'd like for you to join them, meaning Chris and Cliff and her mother, join them on a trip overseas. Well, the doctor was hard of hearing, and he thought, she said, I'd like for you to join them at the hip and knees. So the doctor went into a grueling 15-hour operation,
Yeah.
and Chris and Cliff Economack, the Siamese twins were born.
Haven't we got something more important to talk about than that?
Well, some people want to know those things,
You could
Fred.
talk about the CPR. I think people want to know about that.
Okay, then, Fred, they grew up an uneventful life until the mother couldn't handle it anymore. She sold them to a traveling carnival.
Yeah.
And guess what happened?
People paid money to come and see him.
Yes, but this group of itinerant fishermen went to the carnival in Eau Claire and kidnapped them, took them down to the fishing fleet on the Eau Claire River, and put them into involuntary servitude fishing along the Eau Claire River. And there they stayed, chained in the galley down there.
Yeah.
For years. Finally, one day there was a storm, shipwreck, and they were thrown up on the banks of the Eau Claire River right behind the L.E. Phelps Library.
Is that right?
And they made their way down here, and they've been here ever since. I think
They couldn't get out, huh?
Something like 20, 25 years they've been down here now.
Are they still in servitude?
No, they're the engineers down here. Chris and Cliff Economack, the Siamese twins of Engineering Supreme. So that's the story on Chris and Cliff Economack. So even though their mother made a mistake when they were born, they turned out to be famous.
And you made another mistake when you told all about that.
Okay, Fred, as usual, since we don't have a guest today, if we move the camera just a little bit there, get Freddie in there a little more. Right there. Okay. Now, Fred, since we don't have a guest, you're going to be the guest. We're going to stump the guest today, and you're the guest. Now, you're batting 100 from the last show, so let's see if you can keep it up here now. Year, 1935. The date, August 14th. Now, I know that was a day ago. 1935, Fred. What happened? President Roosevelt was in office.
Well, he was in office?
Part of the New Deal.
Part of the New Deal, he
signed
signed into law
an act.
an act. Was it a constitutional act?
That's what, and you're still living under to this very day.
Social Security?
That's right. Still, your record is intact, Fred.
I got my Social Security, I guess it was 1936 I got my...
1 year after it started.
Huh.
Now, that's really something, Fred. There's a baseball strike going on, but you're batting 1,000.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, Fred.
Yes.
Wednesday, this Wednesday, about 3:30, Carson Park.
Aaron is going to be, a statue is going to be unveiled to him for his deeds while playing baseball. He started here in Eau Claire.
Hammer and Hank Aaron, this Wednesday. Right
you
here.
You want to get over there and cover it there, Chuck.
Right here in beautiful
downtown Eau Claire.
Carson Park. Okay, Fred. It's getting harder to stump you. You're still batting 1,000. Well, Fred, there's been some crazy things happening here in the last days. Now, you've heard of the political correct movement.
Oh, yes.
And just in the last couple of days, 2 Eau Claire men were charged with the political correct clause in the state law. Actually called the, what exactly is that law, Fred?
Discrimination Act or something? The State Discrimination Act?
Hate crimes provision in state law, which adds a extra charge on top of it. Now it's kind of evolved out of the political correct movement on campuses, but now it's a state law, so you can't say nigger anymore, Fred, because somebody might say you're being derogatory.
Is that right?
But you need to look it up in the dictionary. There's more than just black niggers. There's white niggers. Look it up. I mean, everyone's used that as a derogatory racial term, but I know some white people who have been called that. You can't say the word chink anymore, Fred. Now that's what these guys said. They're facing some pretty serious time here.
Well, they shouldn't have done it to begin with.
I know, but there are laws already on the books.
It's a derogatory term.
There are already laws on the books, Fred, that will handle this. I mean, we're getting into a political correct thing here where your speech is going to be monitored. They're going to have cops in everybody's house to make sure that they speak right.
Well, they're not going to put them in houses.
Where are they going to put them?
I haven't got enough to keep them on the streets there to stop the crime.
That reminds me, Fred, you know that crime bill that was just tossed out because of all the pork?
Yeah.
From what I understand, this 100,000 police, only 20% of the money was going to come from the federal government. The other 80% was going to come from state and local governments.
Yes.
So the state and local governments would have to raise the taxes to foot the bill for these 100,000 police.
Right.
Sounded good on paper, but when you start looking behind that, start digging into it, and there was all kinds of other pork in there. It didn't have anything to do with crime.
Well, they were going to have midnight basketball leagues and so forth. And I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't want my kids playing in a midnight basketball league. If they want to play basketball, play before.
Well, Fred, unfortunately, this here hate crimes bill there, that could cause problems. It's a freedom of speech thing, and I mean,
well,
on all sides of the spectrum, people call each other names.
It may be challenged and down the line.
People call each other names in the heat of passion and stuff, and sticks and stones can break our bones, but names can never hurt us, Fred.
Well, one thing that we have to consider, the Hmong people wouldn't be here in our country if we had the guts to do what we could have done and should have done and win that war in Vietnam. We wouldn't have the problem. So we're responsible for that problem.
Here 20 years later, Dave Zien gives a speech up in Bloomer.
Yeah.
It says the word gook, which was on pretty much every veteran's lips over there during that period. That was the slang term for the enemy. And look at the uproar that caused.
Right.
But you know, I didn't see him charging Dave Zien with a hate crime.
No.
It's kind of odd, isn't it? Hopefully they'll rethink this thing here, and you know, free speech is one thing, and derogatory remarks are another. But there are things like assault and other charges that could be leveled against them without slapping on some new politically correct law on them. So, Fred, we got that out of the way. And I just want to make it crystal clear that I didn't call you those names, Fred.
That's right.
It was for...
Right, and then remember that you don't have to call me any other names when you introduce me either.
That was for example, what do you call it, for exhibition or whatever, for example, to see what I was talking about. Okay, Fred, they're going to really have to clean up a lot of the movies and stuff because they use a lot of derogatory language in those if we're going to really get PC on this deal. All right, Fred, before I tear into this thing you wanted to talk about, this CPR thing, you had a little bit of information there you wanted to talk about.
I got all kinds of stuff here to talk about, and you know, we don't hear about these things in the media, generally speaking. Not on TV, not on radio, and especially not in any of the papers that I get from around here in Wisconsin or up from St. Paul. Now, sheriffs versus the Brady law. A number of sheriffs are suing, calling it unconstitutional and a violation of the 10th Amendment. And Arizona's Richard Mack is one of the ones suing. And Sheriff Prins from Montana, Mississippi's Billy McGee, Texas's J.R. Coog from Val Verde County, Louisiana's Errol Romero, Vermont's Samuel Frank, and Wyoming's Gary Andrews are all suing, claiming that the Brady bill is unconstitutional. They don't have the manpower to follow up on these things and so forth, and they believe it's a violation of our constitutional rights.
Well, eventually, Fred, this whole thing will be computerized, heavily computerized, so that there'll be an instant check. You walk into a store to buy a gun, and there'll be an instant computer check right on the spot. And but in some of the poorer states, they don't have all this sophisticated computer hookup and information superhighway and all that stuff yet. So it's going to take a few years to get that into functioning nationwide. In Wisconsin, we were actually ahead of the federal government on our waiting period. And
some of these sheriffs say that the armed citizen has come to their aid in times of need, and they know that they have an ally in the average armed citizen who is a law-abiding citizen.
Well, you know, Fred, in some locales they have what's called posses, and you can the police will deputize people just for special emergencies, large-scale disasters,
right,
emergencies, to keep down, to keep up law and order and keep down looting and things like that.
Well, there's one thing that we have to realize: the police can't do it all alone. They have to have help. Now, my former mother-in-law, and I say former mother-in-law, she's deceased now, in Chicago in 1967. She was robbed twice when she wasn't home, and the last time they came she was. And with a sledgehammer, the burglars knocked down her solid oak door. They also broke the door from the to the porch, but they knocked it down. Then when they only found $10 in change in that house, she was struck over the head with a sledgehammer, where she was found 36 hours later. She had a series of strokes and died within a year. So the only thing could have saved that woman, and she was on the phone trying to call, but they had ripped the wires out. And nobody, she couldn't get, and nobody who lived next to her, on either side of her on South Elizabeth Street in Chicago, off Marquette Road, nobody called the police.
Okay, Fred. Speaking about posses, and that leads me into something else that I had to talk about here, and that's, you remember the film we showed on Waco?
Yes.
Several times we showed it about the, it appeared that there was a flamethrower shooting flames into
Yes.
the building which started the fire. Well, the producer of that, Linda Thompson, she sent me a release to show Waco 2, but she also sent an alert. And it's really amazing what this alert is all about, Fred. And it's called the Declaration of Independence of 1994. And it's being distributed nationwide for signature, including airdrops over cities, and it will be delivered by the militia in September of 1994 to the White House. The attached ultimatum was sent by certified mail to every member of the U.S. House and Senate by April 21st, 1994. It says all militia units will convene at 8 a.m. Monday, September 19th, 1994 in Washington, D.C., armed and in uniform, to deliver the Declaration of Independence to the White House and to enforce the ultimatum. The militia will arrest congressmen who have failed to uphold their oaths of office, who then will be tried for treason by citizens' courts. This is actually, supposedly they're even going to do this by plane airdrops over cities. And it goes on to list all kinds of reasons why. And it's signed by Linda Thompson, Acting Adjutant General, U.S. or UMUS, which I think means United Militia of the United States. And I got a copy of it in the mail when I got that release for that second film. And it's quite an ultimatum. And you know what it says here, Fred? Note, militia members must wear identifying insignia and be armed. If you are armed and wear a military insignia identifying you as a member of a military unit, if captured, you must be treated as a prisoner of war, not as a criminal arrestee by law. Can you imagine what she's calling for, Fred?
Yeah.
She's calling for an armed insurrection against the United States government in Washington, D.C. in September. That's next month. Just a few weeks, September 19th. She wants all militia units to meet at 8 a.m. Armed and in uniform.
Well, one thing that'll serve to do is the government will intervene and or arrest them and they will have the names of every one of those individuals, and they'll be under surveillance from there on in.
Well, you know what this reminds me of, Fred? It reminds me of communist tactics in other countries where they would flush out dissidents that way. You know, they would take the thumb off them just long enough to let them rise up so they could find out who the leaders were, and then the leaders would disappear into the gulags or into the graves. Now, it could very well be that this Linda Thompson is some kind of agent for the government, some kind of provocateur that's trying to flush out radicals that would do something like this. I guarantee you, Fred, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the FBI, and military intelligence, and those groups have enough sharpshooters that they can pop off them heads like watermelons exploding, and those guys are going to be wiped out. They're not going to let a ragtag group of
I know.
armed irregulars march on Washington and try and arrest congressmen. Sounds like a slaughter. Sounds like a setup. And this is coming from the American Justice Federation out of Indianapolis. It's pretty scary stuff, Fred. Sounds like they're calling for some kind of rebellion here. And you know what?
The American people have a lot of things to rebel about.
Here's the clincher, Fred. Here's a petition you're supposed to sign and send to her with a list of the names of your people. Now, isn't that cute? Send her a list of the names of the militia in your area. I guarantee you that those government agencies will swoop down in the middle of the night and arrest everybody on that list. Sounds like one giant setup to me, Fred.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? Now, we heard I won't say which group, but you and I heard a guy warn us about this over probably 2 months ago.
Yes.
That it looked like a setup. Well, it's coming to pass, Fred. We'll see what happens on September 19th. Hopefully nobody will do anything stupid and actually march out there with some kind of uniform on and a loaded AK-47 or pistol or shotgun or whatever. All right, Fred. I think everything's hunky-dory here, and we got calls waiting, and so we're going to try and take a call here. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
This is for Fred.
All right.
Yes.
Are you running for any election seat or anything?
Absolutely not.
Chuck, you are, aren't you?
Chuck is.
Colonel. Where'd you get Colonel at?
Oh, I'm sorry. He just reminded me of someone. Chuck, are you running for something?
Yes.
What are you running for?
United States Congress.
Oh, are you running against Dave Zien then?
No, not at all.
Oh.
He's running for state senate.
Okay, I noticed that you just put your name up there big under the cow report, so I knew you were running for something.
Huh. Okay, Fred, you forgot to mention my T-shirt.
Well, it's a beautiful T-shirt you have there.
Brand new, Fred.
Yes.
Of course, we're on the wrong camera to get a close-up of it. Maybe we can maybe I can stand up and get a close-up of that. There. U.S. Taxpayers Party, 1-800-2-VETO-IRS. Isn't that a beautiful T-shirt, Fred?
Yes, it is.
Red, white, and blue, and the American Eagle. U.S. Taxpayers Party. All right, Fred. And, since we got the close-up cameraman in there, we have the official ink pen, Fred. Probably won't be able to get it in there, but it's a hologram-type ink pen, and it says on it, "For God and Country, Chuck Lee for Congress. This time, the time for change is now. 3rd District of Wisconsin, 715-835-2133. That's the official ink pen, Fred. Yes. I want to give you the first one right here on national television.
Okay.
Okay. So remember, folks, do not sign this thing and don't march on Washington.
Is this filled with red ink?
I don't know. I haven't checked it. Don't march on Washington and don't be signing anything, getting your name on some list with the FBI or the CIA. I guarantee you'll get a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and they'll hustle you away just like they did in Russia for 70 years. Do not listen to this woman. She's gone off the deep end, Fred.
All right.
Okay, Fred, before we get into that, we're going to take one more call. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Fred, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you use Depends Guards for Men?
Do I what?
Something about the new ink pen. He wants to know how you like it.
Well, it's a nice pen.
Okay.
And it writes. It doesn't write in red ink either. It's black ink.
Okay. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Doc, I'd just like to wish you luck in the election.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I just turned 18 not too long ago, so it'll be my first election, and I'm going to vote for you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Fred. I think we cleared up some of the calls there, and I think we had a little technical difficulty on Fred's mic, but Fred's got such a booming voice anyway that sometimes you don't even need a mic, Fred.
Yes.
It's amazing. And I've noticed since that operation, Fred, your voice has gotten louder.
Is that right?
Yep. Okay, Fred. Right here, August 15th. This is your second question, Fred.
That's today.
This one is for
Monday.
$20.
$20?
The second question. Are you ready?
I don't think I'm going to answer if that's all I'm going to get.
1969, Fred. 25 years ago today.
1969.
Well, let me tell you,
we
the
were
rest.
Yeah.
It was kind of the the turning point of the hippie generation, and it happened in upper New York.
Oh, Woodstock.
I can't believe it. Still batting 1,000 right here on the program, folks. You saw it here first. Fred Stafford batting 1,000. Here's your $20, Fred. Now we'll be going for the bonus round, which will be worth $40. In the meantime, we'll take one more call here, Fred, and then we'll get into that next exciting bit of information. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Fred, you're a joke.
I don't know exactly.
What was the question?
He said something about Ochoa and the Colombian cocaine cartel.
Oh.
Well, he was killed, wasn't he?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Fred, what do you got there? Something short and sweet.
Well, we were talking about politically correct. There are a lot of things that are happening in our country now, and many of us don't realize it. We don't read about it in the papers. A student wrote an article in his college newspaper to which he referred to two lesbians as deviants, charged with sexual harassment by a campus lesbian. He was found guilty, and the administration punishment, expulsion.
Who was?
This student who called lesbianism as deviant.
You know, Fred, I've said that. What state was that in?
Marietta College, Ohio.
Well, that's pretty close here. I hope old
Yeah.
Perline doesn't start trying to arrest us here on the show.
A white college fraternity advertised as south of the border Rush party with T-shirts depicting a man in a serape and sombrero sitting on a beach and drinking from a bottle. Members were found guilty of launching a racist attack on Latinos, welding negative stereotypes. Punishments? The guilty were ordered to perform 16 hours of community service and to attend sensitivity seminars on multiculturalism were banned. And from intramural sports. In other words, those
Okay, Fred, it's
people
just not happened on campus, Fred. It just happened here in town last week. Now, this politically correct speech on campus is spilled out into the general public. Now we got state laws on this deal here. We'll probably see the Clintonites, Clintonistas out there will probably try and push a federal hate crimes bill, and you probably end up getting a death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you sit there and you can watch MTV and listen to blacks call each other nigger, but that's not a hate crime because they're black and they can do that.
Yeah.
And Mexicans can call each other whatever they call each other, and that's okay. But when a white calls a black that, what about when a black calls a white person honky or something? Is that okay? Because blacks.
No.
I've heard the phrase, Fred, that blacks can't be racist because they're minorities. Well, I'll guarantee you, there's blacks out there that are vehement.
Here is something.
Black racists.
Which
And they
will
hate white
verify
people and they want to kill white people.
Here's something that will verify what you said. A black speaker recently gave his prescription for peace in South Africa. We will kill white women, We will kill the children, we'll kill the babies, we'll kill the blind, we'll kill the cripple, we'll kill them all. This speech qualified as protected and non-racist, and instantly Congressman Vic Fazio of California refused to vote on a bill which would have declared this to be racist.
You know, that guy, he also said, and then we'll dig them up and kill them again.
Oh.
It's unfortunate, Fred. Racism is racism. It doesn't matter what color it is. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
I was wondering where you can get one of those shirts and if it's made out of 100% polyester.
This one is made out of a wool twill.
Okay.
And a cotton blend.
Yeah.
It's very hot and itchy, and that's the way you want it.
Hot and itchy?
It keeps you on the edge at all times.
I have underwear made out of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hot and itchy.
And I think they even put a little steel wool in the back part.
Steel wool?
In the back part there to keep you really on your toes.
Wash the dishes with that?
Yeah. Just reach back there and pull it out, you know, and wash the dishes.
Oh, I don't want to pull it out.
Okay.
Where can you get that type of shirt?
Let's see. Where can we get these at, Fred?
Where did you buy it?
Well, I got one because I'm a candidate.
I know.
For the U.S. Taxpayers Party, so.
But do I have to be a candidate to get one?
No. You can go down to 121 North Barstow. That's campaign headquarters.
Okay, I'm going to get a pen and pencil, okay?
All right.
121 North Barstow?
Yeah, that's campaign headquarters. It's right down there in the gay section of town.
In the what?
The gay section.
The gay section of?
We don't want to say queer or faggot because that's politically, we've got to be politically correct. So it's the gay section of town.
You said queer and faggot, didn't you?
Yeah, but you can't say that on TV. You got to be politically correct on this show, Fred. All right. So, Fred, this is happening in other parts of the country, not just in Eau Claire.
No, it's happening all over.
All right. You know, Fred, I don't know if I ever brought it up on this show about Congressman Steve Gunderson and his 294,000 piece of literature that he sent with taxpayers' money into almost every home in the 3rd Congressional District. That have cost between $60,000 and $90,000. Did I ever mention that, Fred?
It seems to me I heard it before.
Well, there was an editorial recently in the Leader Telegram where the Vicksburg, Mississippi Evening Post was jumping on Congressman for exactly the same thing. And it says, the Congressman's brochure was prepared at union printing shops owned by the federal government and mailed to every single address in the district. And the question is, why do we have to pay to receive unsolicited mail from our congressman, especially in election year, especially right in July, when deeply into the campaign. And it says here, it's a perversion of the franking privilege created at the time our nation was founded. In those days, Congress met only briefly. That's when they were citizens. They were mostly citizens and part-time legislators.
That was before they became political con men.
Political animals. And contained no members who counted on public service for their livelihoods. Free use of the mail and toll-free use of roads were offered to entice people to serve because it was fair. But today, with House members being paid about $150,000 a year, Fred.
Is that all?
Receiving staff and expense allowances in the millions of dollars, and having re-election treasuries stuffed by PACs, which are political action committees. Is it too much to ask that they buy their own stamps? Is it, Fred?
No.
Those kind of salaries?
I think with that, they could afford to buy their own.
Not only that, they got the perks of hopping on planes when they need to fly back and forth, and you know they want to call a news conference. Everybody gets excited and runs, and then they have these what they call office hours. They can advertise them, and they got government vehicles paid for by the taxpayers that can use to travel around to their supposedly office hours, but they're just campaign stops. Right? That's why 90 to 95% of them keep getting reelected. The only way you're going to blast them out of there, short of dynamite, is with term limits.
We got to get the A to Z law passed, which is going to bring up a lot of these government programs are going to have to be funded from year to year, and if they're not doing a job, as many of them are not, they're gross failures. We get rid of them.
Well, we also need to make it
And we better do it before we go bankrupt, and we're well on our way to get there. By the end of this century, if they don't stop the spending down there, the deficit is increasing. While they talk about $4 trillion, there's another 11 trillion or so which is unfunded, such as the pay that the retirees get that were in the military and so forth.
Well, Fred, how can you get these people that are totally out of touch with reality? They're awash in political
Congress is out of control.
They're awash in political action money. Monsanto, where these big guys come around and say, here's 5, here's 10.
Here,
they just throw the money around.
I just got a letter
I'm talking 5 or 10,000
from Senator Herb Kohl. Of course, he thanks me for taking the time to share my thoughts with him. As I'm pleased that Senator Clinton has decided to make health care reform a top priority, and though I have not endorsed any of the health care proposals currently being debated, I'm scrutinizing them to determine which ones are best to providing universal coverage, slowing the health care cost spiral, maintaining quality and fitting all with health care traditions and current needs of Wisconsin, and achieving financial responsibility. In other words, the Clinton health care plan would put 1/7 of the economy under the federal government and give us, I don't know how many thousand more bureaucrats that we have to pay.
Yep, just right down another rat hole, Fred. You know, the law, I'll tell you what needs to be done, and this will straighten this whole mess out. January 1st, an election year. First of all, if a congressman or a senator takes any kind of money from a political action committee, it's a felony. That's the first law they need to make. So you cut out all these special interests that are throwing money around.
Well,
Number two.
Something that you have to think about, too. You have to think about the unions. They don't come under this PAC thing, and they can go out and spend money on their own to elect candidates.
Okay, number two.
How does the individual candidate compete with that? Where's he going to get the money from?
Right now there is government, money for candidates, but all the money goes to the incumbent. So number two, January 1st of an election year, they cannot use the franking privilege. They want to mail out propaganda, they mail it on their own time and their own money, not on a government dole, using government employees to do it. So if you outlaw the taking of political action money, and you outlaw the use of the franking privileges, which is free mailing at taxpayers' expense in election year, you'll start getting rid of some of these guys. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
I called to talk about crime.
All right.
I think that, there's too many bikes ripped off all the time.
Yeah.
But, people should watch for bikes being ripped off.
And then what?
And then, if they get busted,
Yeah.
they should, the cops should, kick their ass and shit.
Okay. Did you have a bicycle stolen?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do. Go down to the city auction, coming up in a couple of days.
Go down to the police department, and they have it down there.
Well, it might be too late now, Fred. There's a certain period of time that you have to reclaim your property, Fred. If that time's passed, he's going to have to go down to the city auction and buy his bike back. I've heard many of people saying there, that's my bike. And the auctioneer or the representative say, well, it's too late. You've got to buy it back now.
I've been down to the police department, too, and I saw all kinds of bikes in their garage.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment that I was listening for the last 20 minutes or so, and I heard a couple of those derogatory remarks that those other people made when they were calling in.
Yes.
And I don't think that, if I don't want to listen, I've listened to your show quite often, and I've heard good things, and I've heard things I didn't care about, but you have the right to say these things. You have the right to your opinions, and freedom of speech goes whether anybody agrees with your freedom of speech or not. And people shouldn't call up and make all these crank phone calls and all that kind of stuff, because that's not what America's all about. And that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thanks a lot for your opinion. You know, Fred, he's absolutely right, and we do have it's a good thing we have things like public access. I know
Right.
that from time to time the people go to like city council and say, I demand that be taken off the air. We had that done to this show once. And but you know, Fred, this is the only voice of freedom left in Eau Claire.
Yes.
Television Free America, right here. We're it, Fred. Everything else is left of center, except the Rush Limbaugh show, and he's kind of a paid agent of the Republican Party. They started him on his road to fame and fortune. The same people that created George Bush created Rush Limbaugh. So, I think we wanted to go on now to Fred, the meat of the show. We got about 19 minutes left. And there's a group out here called CPR, Fred. And
Yes.
you know, some people say it stands for one thing, and some people say, what do you think that CPR stands for?
Well, that is the liberal Republicans who apparently don't believe in moral scruples.
And the CPR initials stand for what?
Well, you have the sheet there. Why don't you read it? I don't
Fred,
know.
you got that hat on backwards or what?
No.
All right. Supposedly stands for Committee to Preserve Republicanism. Somebody told me the other day it really stands for creeps, provocateurs, and radicals.
Is that right?
Well, anyway, Fred, a couple of the higher-ups in that group, a couple of their paid assassins and agents, filed charges against me with the Federal Elections Commission back in March,
Mm-hmm.
saying that I was trying to carry on activities against one Steve Gunderson and trying to sabotage his re-election campaign.
You wouldn't do such a thing, would you?
And unbeknownst to them, the FEC sends, well, the person that's writing the letter thinks
Oh.
they're doing it in private, filing their complaint with the federal government. They don't think anybody back here will see it, especially the person that they're filing a complaint against. Well, unbeknownst to them, the FEC shot me back a copy of the letter that that person from CPR sent out to Washington against me. And the original letter states, I recently had a conversation with a staff person about concerned Republicans of Wisconsin and the type of activity they are carrying on against Steve Gunderson, our 3rd District Congressman, since they are not registered, as well as some homemade signs that have appeared. The enclosed flyer was sent through the mail last October. This is filed in March, but it goes back to October of '93. People who received the mailings here in Eau Claire included Doug Knight, Rob Krybeck, and Jim Carter of Jim Carter Ford. Others in the 3rd District received them as well. Other attempts to influence the ballot include items in the newspaper and on the radio. The box holder of 992 is Chuck Lee. I would appreciate knowing whether or not a complaint can be filed in this situation. Sincerely, Marion S. Aleckson. Now, she's one of the movers and shakers of the CPR group within the Republican Party. And that was sent off. Well, I called up Rob Krybeck.
Is that the same people who had a Perot sign on their line?
I don't
on
know.
their lawn?
So I called up Rob Krybeck and asked him about it. He says, I didn't give them permission to use my name in that letter. So, Fred, they had to do some backpedaling and backtracking, and then they sent another letter to Washington.
Yes.
Of course, they didn't want me to read that one either. They didn't think I would see that one, but this one was sent out there and received in Washington April 4th. And that one was changed a little bit, and it says, this is in reply to the letter which I received from you on March 14th, 1994. After receiving this, I had numerous conversations with several people in the FEC, and it was finally determined that concerned Republicans of Wisconsin is not registered. I am again enclosing a flyer that was sent through the mail last October. People who received this flyer include Doug Knight and Vernon Rude from Sparta. Others in the 3rd District received them as well. Other attempts to influence the ballot included homemade signs, items in the newspaper, and items on the radio. The box holder of 992 is Chuck Lee. I would therefore like to file this as a complaint. Sincerely, Marion S. Alex. So you notice, Fred, that they've removed Jim Carter from Jim Carter Ford, and they've removed Rob Krybeck. Evidently, they must have used their names without their permission. So I shot back a letter here, Fred, to the FEC, defending myself, saying it was my First Amendment right to say what I wanted to about Steve Gunderson, and to picket him, and to send letters, and do whatever I wanted to as a citizen of this great United States. And God bless America, Fred. And I sent that off April 23rd, 1994. Well, there it sat, Fred, my response to the Ellickson attacks. And I'm sure that they were front people for the Gunderson people. The CPR is a front group for the Gunderson campaign. Well, finally, Fred, August 1st, it came down to it, Fred.
Yes.
The decision from the Federal Elections Commission as to whether I'd violated the so-called laws in exercising my free speech rights. And with that, Fred, we'll leave everybody in suspense and take a phone call. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. Hello.
Yes, hello. Say, Chuck, do you happen to be related to the gentleman manning the camera? His name is Craig Lee.
No relation.
Okay, he happens to be an honored and distinguished citizen of the community, and at night he happens to be a cavorting playboy. But he has a strong interest in genealogy, and knowing your patriotic bent, you might see if the two of you have some common descendant back in the Civil War who had a brave service.
Well, my dad had an old tin type that showed an Indian scout with a pistol and one of my relatives with a pistol. Now, I don't know if we were related to the Indian scout or to the other guy, but supposedly my dad tracked back the Lees into Wisconsin, and then where the records were held in Wisconsin, there was a fire there, and that's as far as he could get. So I think that goes back into the 1860s or 70s. So there could be some relationship there. There are a lot of Lees in Wisconsin. You go to other parts of the country and you'll only see one or two in the phone book. You get into Wisconsin, you'll see quite a few of them.
Well, I think Craig has traced his lineage back to Europe to some descendants of infamous notoriety, notorious descendants back there. But just thought I'd pass that on to you. He seems to be an admiring fan of yours, and might be a good political ally to work with in the future.
All right. Well,
thank you much.
Thank you. Okay, Fred, everybody's been suspensefully waiting for the answer to that question. What was the final ruling? I'll tell you, the FEC, they kept me in suspense from March until last Friday. And here's what they finally sent back. The complainant, Marion S. Alex, alleges that Concerned Republicans of Wisconsin is an unregistered committee and that it has attempted to influence a federal election. Duh. Political action committees do that. Private, public citizens do that. Day and night, Fred. 24 hours a day, around the clock.
Right.
Every year for the last hundreds of years. Through distributing literature, homemade signs, and items appearing in the newspaper and on radio. In response to the complaint, Charles Lee states that Concerned Republicans of Wisconsin no longer exist. In regard to the materials referred to in the complaint, Mr. Lee indicates that less than $20 was spent on materials and that he was exercising his First Amendment right to criticize a public official. There are no substantial amounts of money involved in this matter. The organization is defunct, and there is no evidence. There is no evidence that the activity had significant impact on the process. So they tossed it out, Fred. So the attempt of the Gundersonites and the CPR, creeps, provocateurs, and rats came to naught, Fred. And it caved in and collapsed, and I understand there's infighting now and bickering amongst the CPR, and some of the more conservative members are bailing out, like rats, on a sinking ship, Fred. I guess Madison, from what I hear from the rumor mill, Madison, the higher-ups in the Republican Party, told the CPR to back off and quit bringing radicals in from Minnesota and trying to destroy the Republican Party. Well, Thank God I'm out of that mess, Fred. I know you're hanging on there by a thread, trying to hold that, prop that rotten thing to the, that's rotten to the core. You're trying to prop it up and keep it going, but I'm in the U.S. taxpayers party now, Fred. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I think that one guy who said that teenagers should make prank phone calls, I think he was a real chump.
Chump. Do you know that's not politically correct to say that?
No.
You might get 20 years hard labor.
Hard labor.
And unfortunately, you might have a lesbian guard whipping you. That's being nice, calling her a lesbian, Fred.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, what's that on Fred's head?
A helmet.
Yeah, you look like a fucking dork.
Thank you.
At least he's honest, Fred.
Oh.
Okay. That's what we need, my friend, in this country is more honesty.
Yeah. I see where GOP insiders grease the skids for the World Trade Organization. For the GATT Treaty creates a new global authority, the World Trade Organization, whose power is unprecedented. In the UN, the U.S. retains veto power. In the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, we have weighted voting. But in the WTO, there is no American veto, and the U.S. has only one vote out of 117. Our voting strength is less than 1% of the total, like Burundi. And yet, we will pay 20% of the bills.
Okay, Fred. It's time for Stump the Stars. You're going for $40 this time. Are you ready? I'll give you $40. Are you ready, Fred? On this date, August 16th, 1977, one of the most popular rock and roll stars in the world dies in his bathroom of a presumed overdose of drugs. August 16th, 1977. The most famous rock and roll star in the world of all time.
Elvis Presley?
I can't believe it. 3 out of 3, batting 1,000. Here it is, baseball strike. You can't stump Fred Stafford. Fred the Truth Stafford. Take your money. We'll take a phone call while he's recovering. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I think the first Woodstock was better because, like, at the first Woodstock, it wasn't planned or anything, and I mean, the other one was like just big-time commercialism.
Which one?
The '94 one.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's what the country's devolved into.
Hey, Fred.
Yes.
Your hat looks like a giant dildo.
Yes. Thank you.
You know, Fred, think about it. Everyone laments about Woodstock and how great it was. I'll tell you, the last 25 years, that free love and stuff, look where it's got us. 50 different STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. 15 of them uncurable. We got a rampant disease called HIV/AIDS out there that's killing people, destroying their lives. And it all goes back to the free love of the 60s. That and many other things that we thought we were doing to save the world have turned against us. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Fred.
Hello.
I got a joke for you.
Yeah?
This guy went into the bathroom and got Jack off hand. Do you get it? Get it?
Something about he wanted to sell you some candy. I don't know. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah.
As you know, Fred, in the state of Wisconsin, there's a group out there that there's actually a group called something Wisconsin or other. Anyway, their goal is to homosexualize Wisconsin and to have same-sex marriages.
Yes.
Tammy Baldwin is their leader.
Yes.
And we
She's
sent
a state legislator, too.
Action
An
Wisconsin.
assemblywoman.
Action Wisconsin is the name of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they claim they have 100 different groups, including Planned Parenthood and several other groups. 100 groups actively working in Wisconsin to bring down the current marriage laws and to to give the homosexuals in Wisconsin special rights.
In other words, they don't know right from wrong?
Well, she's a state assembly person, and I guess she thinks she knows right from wrong.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, so last week,
What did God say about that?
last week, Fred, 3 female homosexual couples descended on Green Bay and tried to get marriage license.
Yes.
And they waited in there in the clerk's office for over an hour, and they're just so upset that the clerk wouldn't give them marriage license.
Mm-hmm.
All they had to do is pull out the state laws, and it says in there that same-sex marriages are not recognized, and they were prohibited those licenses. But what they're doing is they're trying to soften up the populace so that when Tammy Baldwin makes her move in the next legislative session to once again introduce the same-sex marriage bill, they keep doing stunts like this, shocking the public. They think that they'll have a better chance of pushing that through. Well, hopefully they won't elect people that will do such a thing.
Here we have men meet at Wayside for sex, authorities say, and they arrested 4 people there on 2 different occasions, 2 each time.
Well, that's nothing compared. Yeah, go ahead.
Why do you guys call that cow report?
This is the Cow Report, hosted by Chuck Lee. All right, Fred.
Yes.
Now, that's nothing compared to what happened in Madison a few months ago. Cops finally raided a bar down there. They walked down into the basement, and there's dozens of naked men performing unprotected sex on each other.
Uh-huh.
So they closed down the bar, and the girl gets into court and cries and says, "You can't close this down." They should have sent her up for a couple of years for allowing the spread of AIDS. Unprotected sex in the age of AIDS, Fred. Can you believe that? They're still practicing juvenile things like that. These were adults, claimed to be adults, in a basement of a bar in Madison. And the woman's complaining because they shut the bar down for 90 days. They should have shut it down permanently.
I'd like to talk about
Go ahead, your caller, you're on the air.
Ed, do you think the baseball strike will last a long time, and do you side with the players or the owners?
Well, I think if they'd bring Hank Aaron into the situation, we've got Hank Aaron coming to Eau Claire on Wednesday now. If anyone can settle the strike, Hank Hammer and Hank Aaron can. All he's got to do is get them sides together and get this thing ironed out, Fred. It's that simple. He's going to be here on Wednesday. By Wednesday evening, he could have both sides shaking hands, and this thing would be over with.
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Oh, Chuck and Fred, do you have unprotected sex with cows?
Fred, how do they let them calls come through? We got
I don't know.
We got a bevy of beautiful broads in the other room taking calls, and then they send us this kind of stuff.
That's what proves they're incorrect, that statement.
Yeah, I know. Okay, Fred, we're running out of time here, so you got to give me something that's only 30 seconds long.
Yes. I thought that was very interesting.
We're going to take one more call, too,
Yeah.
Fred, so
Go
let's hurry
ahead.
up. Okay. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air. Whoops. Okay. We lost that call, Fred. I think they're still mad at us after that last call. So hopefully, Fred, these county clerks aren't going to get duped into giving out marriage license to anybody who walks in the door there. I'm glad they still got some kind of laws on that.
Yes.
What's this thing about rock and roll you've been throwing around the last couple of weeks?
Well, I thought you'd be interested in looking at it. It's rather interesting, some of the information on there.
Yeah, well, some of these Christian stations are trying to divert kids back into rock and roll with some of that watered-down Christian rock and roll.
Now, you've been asking me questions all the time. I want to ask you one.
You better make it quick. We've got 30 seconds.
When during the year does the average taxpayer finally start working for himself and not the government?
Sometime in May.
July the 10th.
All right.
In other words, we worked better than 6 months to pay our taxes.
Okay, Fred, we're down to the last 30 seconds. I want to thank you all for tuning in.
The New American Magazine.
With me has been Fred Stafford, Fred the Truth Stafford. My name is Chuck Lee, and of course we want to thank Roy Rogers Hobb and R.J. Robarge, who's going back to Milwaukee, and Craig Lee on camera, and we'll see you again right here next Monday night, 9 p.m. on the Cow Report.
Who's going back to
Good afternoon.
Who's going back to Milwaukee?
One of our engineers, director. I want to thank
Roy Rogers Hobb?